Oh, hey, welcome, Emma. Welcome. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to a Thursday evening. I didn't know that we've done very many Thursday evening live streams, if we've ever done a Thursday evening live stream before. But I got this package in April 26th, and I promised Sandy, who's out in California, that I would go ahead and get this box open because she used a third party to help her pack it. I believe she used a UPS, and she is out in she's out in California, in Redondo, California. Has anyone ever heard of Redondo, California before? I know that Chris, who was involved in the last contest, knows this city because her brother and family live there, apparently. It must be like a beach community, I think is what I read from her comment on Facebook. But if anyone wants to do a little bit of research and tell us a little bit more about what's unique or interesting about Redondo, California. Redondo Beach, California. I apologize. Redondo Beach, California. And if you are the first one to type something in that's really interesting, I might send you something special. I'm going to type it in the chat so you can see exactly. Let's see here. Did I do it right? No, I typed in the wrong spot. I've got my cap lock on. Ah! Okay, I just put it into the chat. If someone wants to look this community up, again, Chris, that was involved in the contest, she wrote the essay that I titled Heartbeat of a Town. She mentioned today on Facebook that her brother and family live in this community. So part of the Cow Country family has ties to this community, but I know nothing about it other than I assume it's near a beach with the name of it, Redondo Beach, California. I would hope so. Otherwise, they might want to rethink the naming of that city. But pretty much everything in California, unless you're inland, is pretty doggone close to the ocean, isn't it? So I'll see if anyone comes up with anything interesting. All right. So this box was shipped after I had a number of conversations with Sandy. And I have conversations with a lot of folks. And she was really, and this isn't the first time, she was really discouraged based on the feedback that she had gotten from other so-called experts in the sewing repair business, that this machine that we're going to unbox today is a hopeless cause. And there's a variety of different concerns that would describe the issues that these different parties were kind of focused on. Sandy had her own concerns about it as well. And this is not an original owner machine. She bought this machine secondhand. I'd have to look back at my notes to see where she bought it. It could have been an eBay machine or an Etsy machine or maybe a Facebook marketplace machine. But that's just the thing. When you go fishing in those ponds, you really never know exactly what you're going to end up with, do you? Because a lot of these sellers are just looking to make a quick buck on these more desirable machines like Sandy picked up. But we'll see what we figure out about it during this live stream today. We're not going to get all the answers, but at least we'll be able to make an initial assessment of it. And then I can give that feedback back to Sandy so that when it gets back on the workbench, eventually, I'll kind of know where we're going to be focusing with it. But this machine is one of my keepers. whenever I come across one, particularly if it's an original owner machine. And I'll give you a big clue as far as who might have made it. It is arguably the oldest sewing machine company when you look at its roots, as far as how far you can look back for that organization, of any company in the world. So if that helps, that helps. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So well, let's get into this unboxing and see what we find. Get just a little bit closer with this rack that I have the camera on. I just knocked over the doctor's wife. Sorry about that. What I wanted to look at real quick is the condition of the box. Whenever I get a machine into the workshop, whether someone uses my method and ships it in a plastic tote, or whether they ship it in a cardboard box like this one that came out of, I think she was talking about sending it by UPS, but it looks like they actually shipped it out of their company headquarters. They have a business out in California, and it's called World Routers. World, not like WORLD, but WHIRLED, World Routers. So they packed this out of their own company. I guess they decided to go with that route. It was probably a little bit more easy and a little bit more efficient to do it that way. But you can see right here, we've got a punch through on this side of the box right here. It feels like it goes all the way in. If I stick my finger into the box, I can actually feel the packing material with my finger. And, cardboard is only so strong, right? And it depends on the quality of the corrugation of it. So this must have taken some sort of a good hit on this side of the box, a pointed hit, in order to go all the way through this cardboard, because it's not a real cheap cardboard that Sandy chose to ship it in. And that's the only outward damage that I can see. Looks like we might have a little bit of oil staining on the bottom of the box, but that could be when it was being shipped here, someone slid it through something on a floor or on the bed of a truck, and the box just picked it up, didn't it? And Sandy was smart. She put her fragile stickers on the outside. You never know how much good that's going to do, but it's better than not doing it, right? It's better than not doing it at all. So all in all, the box is in good condition. It's in good condition. One punch through on the side all the way through. That's it. So we'll check that out real carefully when we get to that, as far as the left side of the box. So it looks like Sandy and or the people at their company that helped pack this up, they used a UPS approach, a box with a box. And you've seen this before when we've done the unboxings. Depending on how tightly the machine is packed inside of this inner box, it can be a very effective way of shipping a machine. I certainly wouldn't use it generally shipping from California all the way to Wisconsin, which is about 3,000 miles. But for shorter distances, to Michigan, to maybe even all the way out to Iowa, or to Ohio, Pennsylvania, I might try a method like this if I were open to that, but it's not going to be as good as mine. So, but we'll see how this one did in protecting this particular machine. So again, I talk about this a lot when we're shipping something. We're going to want to immobilize things as much as we can so that it's not being jostled around, it's not banging around inside of this box. Looks like Sandy did a decent job, or whoever did this packing for her, in trying to fill these gaps alongside of the box. The only thing I notice is the most crucial part of the box. The most crucial part of the box, the way this is orientated, this is the bottom of the box. This is the top of the box. We've got padding on the left side and on the right side. And the left side, again, is where we had that punch through. But we don't have any supplemental padding at all on the bottom of the box down here. So that causes me a little bit of concern, because this is the spot that's probably going to be the most vulnerable, right? As this box is traveling those approximate 3,000 miles, it's going to be dropped or slid or banged against cement floors, against metal floors, against whatever surface that box is being set on, or in some instances being tossed on. We've seen the videos on the internet where some of the package couriers, they can be really rough with packages, or packages like this that are going through a matrix of conveyor belts through some of these huge warehouses where these boxes are processed en route as they're traveling to their final destination. These boxes also sometimes can fall off of those conveyor belts and go crashing to the floor, sometimes 2 or 3 stories up. We're talking about a 20 to 30 foot drop. So if this box takes a tumble, or if it's tossed in an aggressive way, as these couriers are rushing to try to get this package to Oconto, Wisconsin, the bottom of the box has no extra padding whatsoever. And actually, the top of the box doesn't have any extra padding at all either. It's only the left side and the right side. So we're always committed to doing things better, right? So my suggestion to anyone that decides to use the double box method, make sure you pad the top and bottom as well, not just the sides, because the bottom and or the top are going to be the most vulnerable parts, if I can speak, of this box. They're going to take the impact, something getting thrown on top of the box, or this box being thrown to the floor, cement or metal against the bottom of this cardboard box. And again, shock waves, right? When this hits that cement floor or that metal floor, or it falls off of that conveyor belt and comes crashing down to a cement floor, that shock wave going through this box, we may not be able to see it from the outside, but that machine on the inside is going to take a major hit. It's going to take a major hit as it takes that impact. So you can look at it right now yourself. Some good padding here, some good padding on the right side, nothing here, and nothing here. So we learn in this classroom already whether it's an unboxing or whether it's presenting a machine every single time we do one of these. So let's learn from this. All right. Yeah. And again, I know that there's like a bubble type thing on the inside of this Amazon Prime envelope, but it's probably not the best packing material that someone could use in trying to safeguard the machine. So pick your packing materials carefully. Pick them with some discernment, because ultimately your goal is to keep that machine safe, especially when it's traveling all the way across the country. All right, so I'm going to try to take this inner box out. I'll set it on my chair just temporarily. We're going to move this out of the way. So again, not a bad cardboard box. I'm not a fan of them, especially when we're in the months where there happens to be a lot of rain possibility, April, May, even June, because I've had people ship these before and I've been away from the workshop, and when I get back, the box is soaked and I've literally had to take the machine out of the box. Otherwise it would have fallen through the bottom. So again, that's why my preference is to use a plastic tote, which is almost bulletproof when it comes to impacts that would go through the side of this cardboard box very easily. It's almost waterproof. It certainly is water resistant, and it's going to afford a lot better protection in the end. A little bit more of an investment, but you know what? Our vintage machines are worth it. At least I hope they are. So again, not a bad box, not the heaviest boxes I've seen. Some of the ones that they sell at places like Home Depot and maybe even the U-Haul stores tend to be a little bit higher in corrugation value. And corrugation value means it's going to create a little bit more of a boundary, a barrier around your machine on the inside of that box. And then we've got, again, the bottom of the box. You can see we're not talking about, it's probably only about 3 millimeters thick maybe. And after that, that box I just took out of here is making contact directly with that cement or metal floor. So just keep that in mind as you're packing your machine. We create those layers of protection around the machine, and then the result is we get a machine that arrives safe and sound. Okay, so I'm going to go with Sandy's note here. This is our top. It's marked very clearly. We don't know which way the machine is orientated in the box, so we're going to be doing a little bit of guesswork here. I do see that it's kind of bulging out right here on this side. We'll probably end up and it feels like it's pretty well padded in there, but I can feel some movement. And again, using this double box method, which UPS is known for, the big deal is that machine that's on that inner, on the inside, that inner box, you've really got to pad that to the hilt so that that machine has no opportunity to move around in this box. It's just frozen in time as it's being transported. Okay. I don't know. I'm kind of inclined to open this side that's kind of bulging out. Let's do that. We'll just do it real carefully. And again, whenever you're opening a box, kind of push on it a little bit. Push on it a little bit to see how much clearance you have underneath here. It feels like the machine is almost right up against this edge of the box. And the way it's orientated, with top being written like this right there, we're going to trust that this should be the front of the machine, right? So I'm going to shorten my blade. Right now it's way too long. I'm going to try to shorten my blade. This puppy is not being too happy. There we go, that's better. Oh, there's two blades sticking out. That's what it is. You see that? I've actually got two blades. One blade should be retracted down below, and it somehow came out. So now I've got two blades in there. I'm going to try to push that one back down. I'm going to go even shorter than that, probably right about there. You know, the other thing I could do, instead of cutting here where it's kind of bulging out and we assume the machine is right up against this corrugation, is I could also cut open the top and take a peek. That way we could take a peek inside before we commit ourselves to opening up either one of these sides. Why don't I do that? Because this has quite a bit of give in it, so I think we're safe to cut into it. Oh, interesting. So I'm going to show you guys real quick. And this is where you have to be careful on marking your box. Sometimes as you're packing something, you can lose track of how that machine or that carrying case is orientated in the box. And we've had them arrive at the workshop before where someone mistakenly marked the box and then that machine has gotten shipped upside down all the way to the workshop. Now this says top right here. So we would assume that the machine is sitting like this in the box. The front of the machine should probably be facing this way. It's not like that at all. Let me show you. And those of you that are regular followers on this channel probably already recognize this carrying case. You probably already recognize it. But it's not sitting like we would have expected it to be sitting. We would have expected it to be sitting like this, up and down, with the bottom on the bottom of this box and the front facing this way. But it's actually on the side. And depending on how well it's padded in here, that could either be a good thing or a bad thing, because these carrying cases are fairly tight inside, but there's enough movement area that this machine could be damaged, especially being shipped sideways like this. So we'll see what we find when we get inside. It looks to be a much nicer case than the one we got from London, England, from Adam. This one looks like, at least on this side, as far as what we can see, it looks like it's in fairly good shape. Oh, hi, Susie. We were just talking about you the other day, Susie, because we hadn't seen you for a while. I think it may have been Emma that said, I wonder how Susie's doing. We haven't seen her pop up for a while. And Susie is from the great state of Minnesota, so right next door to Wisconsin, right next door. So it's good to see Susie for sure. All right, so now we know which way this is orientated. We should be able to grab this handle on the inside and kind of rock this case forward. And maybe not, it's a little bit too tight. So I'm going to real carefully open up the front of this box, and then we'll be able to take the case out straight away. And again, the advantage of opening up the top is I can look on the other side now and see exactly how much clearance I have. There's no guesswork. Oh, hello to Mickey Potts. Isn't that a fun name? Mickey Potts from Tampa, Florida. Emma is from Florida as well. Mickey. Emma is from Southwest Florida, Naples area. Yeah. Got a number of folks from Florida. Well, assuming that the machine is in the case correctly, because believe it or not, I've had this type of machine, and most of you, again, that are regular followers of this channel, you probably already know pretty much what machine is in here, don't you? By the design of the case, the color of the case, etc. But I've actually had the machines put in these cases upside down, and I've had them put in backwards as well. So hopefully it's in the case correctly. If that is the case, then the front of the machine is facing up, which is great because the weight of the machine then is not being pushed down against the bottom of the case. Again, the outside box didn't have any padding between this box and the other box. So hopefully it's in the case the right way. Yeah, hopefully. So if you're not familiar with these cases, right now I have it facing the wrong way. This is actually the back of the case. So I'm going to turn it around. And then when we release these hinges, you'll see that this front part folds down just like a garage door. And then we're going to be able to see what's inside of that case immediately. There's no drama. There's no delay factor. We're going to see how well it's padded. We're going to see how it's orientated, and hopefully it's all great. It's all great. But this is a lovely case, isn't it? Just kind of turn it again so you can see all sides of it. You remember that one that we got from London, England, from Adam? All of this stitching had basically rotted away and loosened, and the case was just falling apart. It's in real bad shape, but I'm going to see what I can do to remedy that. Otherwise, we'll look at a suitable replacement for our friend from London, England. And as I tilted it back like this, I can feel the machine inside of the case bump, 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 bump. So that's telling me that we're probably not going to, we might find kind of like the box, we might find a little bit of padding on the left and right side, hopefully, but there's not going to be any padding that's keeping this machine from going back and forth like this. So with it being orientated basically like this in that box, the front of the machine should be facing this way, but it was still bouncing up and down. Still bouncing up and down. And any movement with a case like this can cause damage, right? Any movement. Oh, hello to Kevin and Doreen. Hello to Paula. And I think I've greeted everyone else already, including our new friend from Tampa, Florida. And now we've got 3 Florida folks. 3 Florida folks in the live stream now. We've got Paula, we've got Emma, we've got our friend from the Tampa area. And Mickey Potts from Tampa. And then we've got our friends from Iowa, Kevin and Doreen. And we've got our friend from Minnesota, Susie. So we are all over the board. We are all over the board. Kind of fun, huh? Did Scott ring the bell yet? I did. It's a silent bell, so you have to get a late pass from Emma. Although you're a moderator, Paula, so you can actually issue yourself a late pass too. All right, let's pop this open and see what we have. So it's interesting. I'm really surprised to see this many of these little airbags in here, because the machine is moving quite a bit when you tilt the case back and forth, which means when it was on its side, the machine was able to go up and down like this, kind of bouncing and banging and crashing. So this is kind of surprising to see this much as far as padding in here. The problem with some of these airbags is they do go flat, kind of like this one right here. But they're also so big that they can't get into those smaller spaces and immobilize the machine inside of a case like this. So these aren't bad packing materials at all, but they're probably not as practical as smaller bubble wrap that you can kind of tuck in there and really, really get that machine nice and snug, kind of like wrapping a quilt around it and holding it in a place where it's not going to be able to move around at all. So that would be the only observation about this, is, you know, something a little bit smaller that can fit into those tighter spaces within the case. The other thing too is, as I pull these away a little bit, I'll kind of get these out of the way. And as typical, probably about, this is actually better than usual, we have about 20% of this padding little airbags that are popped already. So as that machine was rocking back and forth, you know, we're talking about a 40-pound machine basically. It's able to pop these little bags. But you notice that the machine itself isn't padded at all. There's a little bit of padding around it, but it's not cocooned like you've seen in some of my packing videos for Swedish Beauties that are going to go inside of the case. So again, with our goal of constant and never-ending improvement, constant and never-ending improvement means we're always looking at things, not to be cruel, not to be mean, not to be judgmental, but looking at things with opportunity, saying, how can we be better tomorrow than we were yesterday? How can we be better next week than we were the week prior? And whenever you're packing a Swedish Beauty like this, there's a number of vulnerable spots on it, right? Upper tension included. And certainly on the side, we've got the casing as well, where the bobbin winder is. On the back of the machine, we've got another case cover as well that goes over the motor. So creating that cocoon around the machine, like you've seen me do, is going to ensure to the greatest degree that that machine arrives without any damage. And again, with it being able to move around in the case, as I tilted it back and forth, it could always sustain damage internally too, because we may not see that it's been bumped hard one way or another, but that shock wave goes all the way through the machine when it's able to have that much movement within the case. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, I'm not being critical of Sandy or whoever packed it. I'm just offering suggestions so someone that packs a machine in the case like this in the future can do even a better job. It's always improving on things, right? But some real good intentions here, some real good intentions. This is the type of padding material right here, these smaller bubbles that you would want to use on the sides in the case if you're not going to cocoon the machine. Best thing is to cocoon the machine though, right? So I don't have all the details. I know that Joelle on Facebook had written something like, I wonder what's wrong with the machine, that these people that looked at it out in California would have basically given it a death sentence, basically said junk it. And these are, again, probably sew and vac places that the core of their business is not generally going to be machine repairs like this. It's going to be in doing what? What are the sew and vacs really hoping to do as part of their core business to generate the most revenue? Especially if someone's bringing in a vintage machine like this, that it's not their original machine. They don't know all the issues with it. And, they're kind of sitting on the edge of how much money do I want to invest in this machine that I bought. They're even easier than to convince in some instances that the machine should be tossed away. It should be junked, because they don't know the history of it. They don't know the provenance of it, right? They don't know anything about that machine at all. So we don't know all the particulars about this machine at this point. I know that Sandy mentioned some issues in relation to the tensioner, and on this side that something was not anchored properly. It may have been the presser foot that was rotating from side to side or something, and she thought maybe a screw was damaged or missing. But all the other particulars, we've got no clue at this point why these people assess the machine like that, apart from their own motivations. I'm just looking at the chat real quick. Oh, yeah. Susie is celebrating her recent retirement. She's very excited about that. Very cool. Yeah, and I agree. I agree with you, Paula, because especially with the Swedish beauties, where you've got factors of tri-motion, you've got feed dog adjustments that have to be made, you've got a variety of other things in relation to the timing and the hook system. Because again, the Swedish beauties are designed with a floating hook system. It's part of that jam-free raceway feature that is such a great feature design on these Swedish beauties, these green machines, where instead of that hook system, this is a rotary hook system. Instead of it rotating in a fixed position, it's going up and down. It's going from side to side to allow that thread, as it gets heavier, to pass through without getting jammed. And so the hook timing on these machines is also a little bit trickier than an average rotary hook type machine. But I agree with Paula. I would not take it to an average sew and vac, and I'm not sure what an above average sew and vac looks like either. It's kind of a guessing game, isn't it? Kind of a guessing game. Well, let's get this out of the case and take a look at it. And I can see that it's arrived in. It does not have an extension bed with it, so let's That's okay. I don't need the extension bed. There's a note from the owner. I'll set that to the side. Oh, this is interesting, isn't it? This is our main power cord, and it looks like someone wrapped it up with the type of tape that you use. It's an aluminum base tape, and you're typically going to use it when you're working with HVAC, ductwork, and that sort of thing. It's really, really sticky stuff, and it does an excellent job of adhering to aluminum because it's in part made out of aluminum. And it's not the type of tape that I would ever use on a main power plug. Would you? I don't think most folks would probably choose to use an aluminum based tape on anything electrical like this directly to that. So this is something I'll have to look at a little bit more carefully. And depending on what's underneath here, if there is a crack through and there's bare wires or something, that could even cause grounding out or a shock risk for the person that has it plugged into the outlet and then goes to grab it. And if this is grounded out on some live wires, they're going to get a shock off of this as well, aren't they? So yeah, choose your kind of like packing materials. Choose your materials carefully. And when you're dealing with electricity or something that's electrified, don't use something that can conduct that electricity that's on the outside that could be a risk to you or could be a fire hazard. So I'm going to be very reluctant to plug this in with not knowing what's underneath here today. Hopefully you understand that. But I've used this for a number of HVAC applications, and it's incredibly great aluminum-based tape. It's fabulous, fabulous stuff. And I'll share something with you guys. I recently went to a sew and vac store that's located probably about an hour and a half from here. And I didn't go there for the intent of going to that store when I went to that local community. I went there to meet with a customer that had an original owner, Swedish Beauty, coincidentally. They had a Swedish Beauty. It was a Type 21. And after talking to the owner, it had been in the family for a long time. And I drove that hour and a half because I wanted to go there and evaluate the machine. If I didn't end up buying it, at least I could show that owner, who had not really been a high user of it. They didn't know how to use the cam features of it and other things like that. I could at least show them and do a nice sew off for them. So as they presented the machine for sale, they could show that potential buyer what that machine was capable of, right? But as I was in the area and I got done visiting with that owner with the original owner machine, and I did end up buying it. And I bought it in part because, well, I bought it primarily because it was an original owner machine, and I evaluated it out in their garage. They had it set up on a table. And as I evaluated it, it was clear that it needed some TLC. It needed some workshop magic, but it would be a great machine. It would be a great machine, especially knowing the provenance of that machine, right? The history of the machine. It had been in that family. Her mom had it from the very beginning, back in 1962 when it was born. But I also bought it because I thought this would be a great machine that could potentially be a machine that Emily Oyama could pick out. I recently got word. Let me get in the shot here. There I am. I recently got word from Emily and from Veronica down in Del Rio, Texas, that they're not going to be able to make the trip all the way to the workshop. But what they would like is a virtual tour of the workshop, and to make it more efficient, because out in my overflow, it was let me think. Doreen and Kevin, when they came to the workshop, and when Maddie came to the workshop, Maddie, Emma, yeah. When the folks came to the workshop, they saw my overflow area in the garage area, row after row after row of machines, usually about 6 to 7 deep, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of machines, and it would be really tough, as I'm holding a camera to try to climb a ladder and to try to tilt machines and to show all these machines to Emily and Veronica Oyama down in Texas, like on a live stream or whatever I would do for them to show them all the machines. So they said, really what we're hoping for is that you'll pick out some of the cherry pick machines that are portable machines that are really, really wonderful machines that Emily or myself would be able to carry with us and, take different places. So that was part of the reason I picked up that Type 21, is I thought that would be a great machine that I can put in a lineup, and then they can look at the different machines and pick the one that they want. They, again, were the grand prize winners for not our last major contest, but the one before that, where we did the Willy Wonka theme because of the 50th anniversary of the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory movie that Gene Wilder did. And if you didn't see any of that, you can go to the channel and you can look for that playlist, and you can look at all the stuff that we did with that fundraiser that was intended to help the local humane society here in Oconto that services Oconto and all the surrounding area. It's the Oconto Area Humane Society. And we did really great with that. It was really a blessing. We hope to raise $5,000. We raised $6,400 to help this local humane society. So that's because of all of you and because of our combined efforts in trying to help a great cause. But they ended up getting one of those golden tickets, along with Susie, who's in the live stream right now. I believe Susie got a golden ticket too. I think she did. Susie, I'm pretty sure. And then we did a grand prize winner, pick. And Jose's little boy picked out the golden ticket. It happened to be Emily and Veronica Oyama from Texas. So the long blah, 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 blah is I was recently on the road evaluating a machine, ended up buying it, and now I'm going to present it as one of the options. Probably I'll give them about 5 or 6 machines. I've got Elnas, I've got Swedish Beauties, I've got, trying to think of some of the others, I've got some Singers that have portability as well. I've got some Kenmores, and so they'll be able to go down the line and pick the one that they want, and then we'll ship it to Texas. Yeah, so there you go. Oh, Susie says, I just finished eating the chocolate. Susie, you are a woman of incredible control and discipline. I know very few people that would be able to make the chocolate last as long as you have. That is a miracle. That's a miracle. And I know that, who was it? I think it was our friends down in Texas when I was shipping that chocolate out, because people would make a $50 donation. For every $50 they donated, I would send out a Willy Wonka bar, and then they could see if they got a golden ticket, right? Well, when some of these bars got out to the hotter areas, like in Florida and out in Arizona and down in Texas, they were basically a melted mess. They were a melted mess. So, wow, I'm impressed, Susie. I'm very, very impressed. Yeah, that was Paula. Paula did a pretzel dip with her chocolate. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. What do they say? If you got lemons, make lemonade, right? If you got melted chocolate, find something creative to do with it. Okay. Let me just bump the music down real quick. So, one thing that I've talked to you guys about before is when it comes to these Swedish beauties, all these speed control pedals that these machines come with, when you look at them from the side, from the top, from whatever angle, they're going to look identical, right? They're going to look virtually identical. But when you go to the back plate, it's going to give you the type. It's going to give you the number. It's going to give you the voltage breakout. It's going to give you the ohms, and then also on the top, it's typically going to give you the compatibility that this foot controller is most suitable for. I'm going to get real close and see if you're able to focus in on that. Turn my light on, see if that helps. No, that's going to make it worse. I've got my laptop on the lower tier, so I can't see real well. If you're able to see that, let me get down on my knees again so we can look at that. Come on, camera. There you go. So if you look at this particular foot controller that's matched up with Sandy's machine, if you look real close on the top row is going to tell you what machines within this class 21, that this foot controller is most compatible with. And this is going to be a product, the way this foot controller is set up with the types of capacitors, resistors that are in it, it's going to determine how that foot controller, as the gateway for the electricity, is going to interact with that motor and with that machine, right? So any of these foot controllers will work with a Swedish Beauty. You can run any of these with a Swedish Beauty, whether they're set up for a model 2000 from the 1960s, a class 20 from the late 1940s, early 1950s, or one of these later ones that would have come, say, with the 19Es that would have come out in the 1960s and 70s. But again, I always talk about optimization, right? If you put the wrong foot controller with the wrong core machine, you're not going to get the same level of performance that you would. And in some instances, it could be a little bit dangerous to the motor, depending on how that foot controller is wired and the voltage level of the capacitors. I've shown you guys before that capacitors are designed as a reserve type component in foot controllers and motors, and they can store a ridiculous amount of electricity. We just think about plugging into an outlet, right? And it's 110, 120. Or if we're over in Europe by our friend Alex Askarov, it's going to be around 230 volts. But these capacitors become sponges for that electricity as it's flooding through that system. And they can store thousands of volts of electricity. It's ridiculous how dangerous they can be as a reservoir, especially if they fail and they allow that like a dam breaking, they allow that energy that's been held back, that's been held in reserve and stored, to suddenly hit that motor. We saw that happen recently, remember, with that Husqvarna that I had to repair, where the capacitor literally blew up inside of the motor. And there can be a variety of reasons for that, one of which, the foot controller that's matched or married with that machine is not the best choice. And that's what we have here. This one is set up for a CL21A. And what we have on the workbench is not a CL21A. It's actually a Type 21. And I don't want to make this, I don't want to be a drama queen about this, because it's a 1.5 amp motor, but there is a better choice for this machine than the foot controller. So I'll have that conversation with Sandy. And again, when people are picking these up to flip them, on eBay or Etsy or Facebook Marketplace or whatever it is, they might acquire a machine and they know that it has value. Maybe they even came across our channel and they've heard us talk about Swedish beauties, and they've heard about, you know, the projected resale value of a machine like this. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And so they just go on one of those venues and they find a foot controller that looks like it's the right match, right? Like this one. And it even has the right plug-in, right? And it goes in beautifully. Look at that. But again, it is not the foot controller that was originally designed with this Type 21 in mind. It was designed for a CL21A. And again, depending on the capacitor that's in that motor, depending on the capacitors and resistors that are in that foot controller, you may get away with it forever. You may have a foot controller that overheats. You may have a motor that blows out. And if you're incredibly fortunate and you don't use aluminum-based tape to wrap any other parts of the electrical fields of the machine, then you might get away with it for a long time. But I always go with the best route, don't you? We always want to do it the right way. And so I'll have that conversation with Sandy. We'll find a more suitable foot controller. I have some reserve foot controllers that will serve this machine even better and allow this machine to achieve greatness with nothing holding it back. Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Paula. Yeah. But don't be fooled by this. Type 21 is a totally different series of the class 21 than the 21As. The 21As, you're going to tell a 21A straight away because the 21As and the 21Es, which were later series machines, they're going to have a totally different upper tension unit than this one. They're also going to have a different control for reverse and for stitch length control. You can see right over here, we've got a lever that allows us to manage stitch length. And if we push it all the way to the top, we can sew in reverse. The 21As and 21Es, or the CL21As and the CL21s that use this foot controller, are going to have a circular knob like you've seen before on this channel. It's going to have a circular knob, and then it's going to have a button right in the middle that you push to allow you to sew in reverse. And if it's an E series Husqvarna, when you push that button in, it's going to have a two-stage feature. I've shown that to you before in premieres, where you push that button in and it locks in place, and then you push it a second time and it releases. But you guys are very smart. You're very sophisticated. Just realize, because it has a green case, they had green cases similar to this, a little bit different hue, going all the way back to the class 20s. But the insides, the way it's wired, the capacitors that were used, the voltage retention of those capacitors and resistors is going to be different as you go through the different series and the different evolutions of the green machines from the mid 1940s all the way into the 1970s. So that's where, getting into the particulars of the compatibility of the foot control, because again, the foot controller acts as a gateway for that electricity to go into the motor. This is the floodgate right here. When you push it, it's allowing that electricity then to be released through the foot controller to the motor. So you've got capacitors, you've got resistors in here, you've got capacitors on the motor. They've got to be equally matched. It would be like in your car having a fuse go out on your car, and that particular fuse that goes out is in a spot in your fuse board where it's clearly rated at 30 amps. It's rated at 30 amps. All you have is a 20 amp fuse. Would it be a wise choice to put a 20 amp fuse in a 30 amp junction point on a board? Go ahead and type in the chat what you think. I'm going to turn up our rap music while we're deciding. I don't miss a thing, don't regret it, I'm always learning. You could call me academic, I'm always working. Never been apathetic, that energy is like a poison, needs a man, a septic. Susie's saying, nope, don't think so. Paula's saying no, exclamation point. I love Paula's exclamation points. Paula is the exclamation point queen. Paula, I bow to you for your exclamation points. And Emma's saying as well, not advised. You know, you can have two sides to that. We turn our rap music down again. You can have two sides to that, right? You can have. Let me grab another foot controller. I'll show you. Where did I put that new machine that I just got? Where did I put that silly thing? Ugh. Hold on a second, you guys. Almost there. So my little scenario, I was talking to you guys about fuses in a car, right? Fuses in a car. So this is an original 1.5 amp. Let me move this over here again. This is an original 1.5 amp Husqvarna motor. And you can see this is one of the main capacitors right here. See if it gives the schematics. It's actually rotated the wrong way. But when the electricity comes into an electric motor like this, one of the first gateways it has to go through is through this capacitor that's going to reserve and kind of hold energy back. The whole idea of it, it's going to allow kind of an even flow of electricity into that motor so you don't have spikes. But if you have too much energy going into a capacitor like this, it's going to be rated at a certain voltage and a certain number of ohms. It can cause this thing to overheat and blow up like it did on that one customer's. You guys saw that that stuff on Facebook, and you saw it on YouTube as well. Now, there's also similar components like this on the foot controller as well. They've got to be matched. And I gave you a scenario. What if you have a 30 amp fuse that goes out? Can you put a 20 amp into that junction point on the fuse board? And all of you said no, because you're saying, wait a second, if it's rated at 30, why in heaven's name would we put a 20 amp in there? It's not going to be enough. And you're right. But it would actually be, if you had no choice but a 20 amp or a 40 amp type fuse, you would be better putting the 20 amp in there and have it blow than taking a 40 amp fuse and sticking it into that same point where that 30 amp would go, because then it allows too much energy to flow through that system, through the wires, through the components like the motor, and it can actually damage the motor. So that's the safeguard of fuses. Or if you have breaker switches in your house, they reach a certain surge level of electricity, and if they surge too high, it causes that breaker to trip, or it causes that, in the older homes, it causes that fuse to blow, and then you got to replace it. You never want to go with putting a larger fuse than that system is designed to be accommodating, because it will actually put you at a greater risk, not only for damaging the equipment, but also for causing a fire. That's where some people used to, especially the farmers, those doggone farmers are so smart, but they would sometimes run out of fuses when they were out on the farm, and they were way out in the country, and they didn't want to drive all the way in to the city to get more fuses. So they would unscrew that damaged fuse, and they would put a copper penny inside of that little cell area, that opening, and then they would screw the fuse on top of that copper penny to do a bypass, so that the fuse would no longer see itself as burned out. It would just create a full electrical flow through that particular circuit. They had a number of their farms that burned down as a result of that, because again, going higher, allowing a higher voltage to flow through a device or through wiring than it's rated for is even a higher risk than going with a lesser amount that's going to underserve it, if that makes sense. Kind of like recently, remember that 201-2 that we had in the workshop? And I talked about the wiring the wiring that they used on that machine was 21 gauge, and that was a 1.5 amp motor. And we had gone through that whole thing of reasoning through it, and Paula had looked it up for us, Paula Noel, and she said, Scott, the 21 gauge wiring is only rated like at 0.9 amps. And that motor on the 201-2 is 0.6. It's going to spike up to maybe 1 amp. So that's really dangerous wiring to use. My whole point in all the blah, 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 whether it's talking about capacitors, resistors, motor, foot controller compatibility, farmers cheating and putting a copper penny in that little socket and then screwing a fuse on top of it, or using fuses inside of your car, they need to match. They need to be compatible fully. Otherwise, you can either damage the equipment or you can put yourself at risk. Okay? So, at any rate, I'll find a suitable foot controller for Sandy's machine, address the other issues that I discover once we take care of this crazy plug setup that they have, and then we'll end up premiering this machine sometime in the near future, which will be great. Really great. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if this one has a bypass or not. Let me see. I'm just going to open this up real quick, see if I can show you what the inside of this looks like. Assuming this is one that has not been modified. It has not. So you can see inside of here, wired into the matrix of this foot controller that I just pulled, is a specific capacitor and a resistor that's built into the matrix of this particular foot controller. Depending on what these are rated at, they've got to be compatible with the capacitor that you can see on this motor. And like I talked about with the fuse things, this can't be rated, so it's going to allow a surge to this. Otherwise, the result will be this is going to blow. So it all matters, doesn't it? It all matters when it comes to compatibility of getting the right equipment. And all of us have had, someone selling something that we need for one of our machines, and we get it only to discover that it's not the right thing for our machine. Sometimes it's a part, sometimes it's, it may be a motor. So yeah, just be careful. Check compatibility, and if you're not sure, and you're looking at something and saying, "Will this work with my Swedish Beauty?" Send me a text, call me, or email me, or whatever, depending on how urgent it is, and I'll do my best to try to guide you so that you don't end up with a scenario where you get a foot controller that's going to cause your motor to blow, kind of like our friend did that sent it to the workshop. Okay, yeah. You probably can't even hear the music, and you're saying, why is this guy dancing? All right, let me set this to the side. So I think we can pretty much wrap this. We can pretty much wrap this live stream up at this point. Yeah, I was going to say I could rewire this real quick, but I'm not going to bother doing that. But I'll give you a closer look at the machine anyway. And I've got to remember that this is Sandy's foot controller, and that one over there is my foot controller. All right, let's take a closer look at this Swedish Beauty. And there's a number of things we can do to evaluate it even without plugging it in. See if we can do that real quick. Boy, this is thread from World War II on here. This is really, really yellowed and dried out. So you can kind of see what I was talking about as far as, let me turn this down again. I was talking about the hook timing on Swedish Beauties is a little bit trickier. It's because normally when a machine is running, it's going to be just turning like this in a fixed position. But the Swedish Beauties hook systems are designed to float. It's called the jam free feature. So you can see when I wiggle it, it goes left and right. It also goes up and down. Kind of see that? So that's where it becomes a little bit trickier to set the timing on these machines because of that float feature of the hook system. And that's where an average sewing back is not necessarily going to set that timing the way it should be. I'm kind of looking inside of the faceplate, and you can see again, unlike the 21As and the 21Es that have a quick release, this particular setup on this Type 21, which is going to be an earlier model, is not going to have that quick release feature that I've shown you before on these. It's that little tooth extension that you can push, and it takes all the presser foot pressure away. This one here, you're going to be able to adjust it as you rotate it forward like this, like I am this way to the front of the machine. We're compressing this spring and we're increasing that presser foot pressure more and more and more. If you could feel the weight on that presser foot right now, if we tried to sew something lightweight, we would get bunching from you know where. Yeah, it would be horrible. So if we're going to adjust this for a lighter sew off, like the Kona cotton that Paula sent me, we would have to push this to the rear quite a ways. Probably right about to there. Still a little bit heavy. There we go. That's just about the right presser foot pressure for a lighter sew off. And then if we decided to shift over to leather, we would just rotate it to the front again. As you see that spring compressing, we're going to be able to increase the presser foot pressure. It's so essential to get the right presser foot pressure depending on the material that you're sewing, because what you'll have otherwise happen is you'll have that machine set at the largest stitch length, and you're going to be getting stubby little stitches because there's not enough pressure on that material to feed it in conjunction with the movement of the feed dogs. You're basically getting slipping. So just keep that in mind as you're sewing. If you're going light, lighten the presser foot pressure. If you're going heavy, leathers, multiple layers, go in and bump up that presser foot pressure and give it a try and see how the material feeds. If you're not getting any bunching and you're getting nice full stitches, then you found that sweet spot. And this band right here is an adjustable band as well, the one I'm touching. This is what's going to give you the return pressure. It's going to push that needle all the way to the right furthest position as it's going through its sewing process. And then the mechanics of the machine will push it back. In other words, the main shaft turning, the other mechanics will push it back, and then the spring will pull it back. It's a push and pull back and forth that allows you to get that sewing action on this machine. So I don't see any issues with that. That sometimes can be an issue where this is either it's either bound up or it's bent. But I'm getting a little bit of the needle position is not, we'll look at it from the front here. That could be a bent needle too. Look at this from the front, and down here on the bottom where the throat plate opening would be. See, right now we're not getting a true center position on that needle. It's slightly off to the right, if you can see that. And I recently had a conversation with my friend Paula Noel. She was looking at a particular machine and had done a number of really smart troubleshooting steps to it, and wasn't able to figure out why the needle still wasn't centered on the throat plate. And Paula can share, if she wants, in the chat what we discovered and what we did to resolve that issue. We kind of talked about it through a chat. And I said, did you try doing this? She said, no, I didn't even think of ever trying to do that. And it resolved the problem for her. So Paula wants to share that with you guys so you can learn from that. That's what our classroom is all about, right? That's what our classroom is all about. So we might either have a bent needle, which is very possible, or I've got to make some adjustments on this to get that needle back in a true center position. Right now we're off to the right. You can see if I adjust it, and because we're off to the right, look at how close that needle is to striking the edge of that throat plate right now. I didn't even look to see if there's a cam in the back of here. There is. There is a cam in the back. The other thing is, if you ever get one of these Swedish beauties and you go to try to fire it up and you strike the throat plate, it might be, well, it could be a variety of different things, but it might be because there's not a cam in the back of the machine. Going all the way back to the earliest 21 series Husqvarnas that came out of Sweden, the cam helps to calibrate and set the swing boundaries of that needle. So you never, as a rule, you never want to operate one of these machines if it does not have a cam in the back, because the needle doesn't know what the boundaries are then, and you'll very likely strike the throat plate, and then you cause scarring. And then as that thread is coming out of the bobbin case and being fed up and out, it's going to be snagging on there and causing all kinds of issues for you. So just keep that in mind. But our right needle position, we're not hitting the throat plate. We're really close. We're real close. I don't know if you can see that or not. Let me go down here. We're really close to it, close to that edge. When I go back to a center needle position, we're still off. We're off to the right. Left needle position. You can see the left needle position also is off a little bit. I've got it set on a straight stitch right now. We're on 0. So when we set this on 0 and we move this is our needle position up here. Left needle position, center, and right needle position. When we go to a left needle position, that needle should be right on the edge of touching the edge of that far throat plate. Look at how far in it is. You see that? We're probably about a millimeter off. And that doesn't sound like a lot. Come on, Scott, a millimeter? But when you get into some of the swing and the decorative ornamental stitches, it's going to throw things off quite a bit. So if that's why this machine should be junked, then I think that Sew & Vac store or Sew & Vac stores that gave that opinion, I think they should be junked, because this is something that I can fix. And the balance wheel is turning nice. I'm not getting any issues with the balance wheel. Our needle swing right now, we're not even. Far right. That's not bad. That's not bad. That's more in line. The cam is helping to set that. But that's an adjustment. That's not a junk the Swedish beauty. That's junk the Sew & Vac store that has that opinion. So, and again, just a couple little tips if you pick up one of these Swedish beauties. The only way you can really manipulate that needle position, if you are determined to have a left needle position, a right needle position, etc., is when the stitch width, which is this right here, is set on 0. That's the only way you're going to be able to get that needle position responding appropriately. So you can see I've got to look over my shoulder here. Yeah. As we are looking to manipulate the needle position, and I've got this set on 0, this control responds very nicely. Left needle position, right needle position, etc. But if all of a sudden I don't realize it and I've got this stitch width above 0, say on 2, because I was just doing a zigzag, or I was sewing some other decorative stitch that's cam output. If I try manipulating this needle position now, the response is not nearly the same. If I try to go left needle position, watch how far it goes. And that could even convince somebody that there's a mechanical issue with the machine, but there's nothing further from the truth. it retards that needle movement the further you move it towards the higher numbers on the stitch width, because the whole idea then is the cam and the tri motion cam as well is going to be managing and manipulating where that needle goes. And right now we're in position 5. You can see we're in position 5 right now on the cam selector. That's always going to give us a zigzag. So all we're getting is a zigzag right now. If you want to get something other than a zigzag, then take your stitch width down to 0. Then this should slide out. Now we're in position 4, position 3, position 2, and all the way out to position 1. But we recalibrate this because when we take this stitch width from 4 down to 0, there's a little reading finger that rides over like reading Braille. It goes over that cam and it reads those bumps to generate the different stitches that can be selected on here. If that finger is into the cam and you're trying to move this slider, you're going to be going against that finger is going to be resisting the movement to this slider, is what I'm trying to say. So we recalibrate it. If we're on 4, we take it down to 0 so that that finger retracts. Then we can change our next stitch selection. Then we can take it back up to 4 after that. And then that re-engages that reader finger into that cam after that. But it's the same thing if you're removing or you're inserting a cam into these machines. You always want to make sure that that finger is retracted so you're not trying to force that plastic cam past that finger. The finger is made out of a lighter gauge metal and it can get bent and knocked out of alignment, and then all of your stitches will be off. So just keep that in mind. Always recalibrate it down to 0, make your change, take it back up to 4 or 3 or 2 or something above 0 to generate your stitch. But that's a real important habit to get into as you're stitching different things off. Let's say we just did our zigzag, and now we want to do stitch number 4 on this particular cam, and we're up on 4 right now. We don't want to try moving the slider now. It's going to be going against that finger that's inserted into that cam. Take it down to 0, move our slider back to 4, do our stitch off, take it down to 0, move it to 3, back up to 4, do our stitch off, take it down to 0, move it to 2, back up to 4, do our stitch off, take it down to 0, take it down to 1, back up to 4, do our stitch off, and it goes on and on and on and on like that. That way you'll never damage your machine and you'll never get really frustrated. Like I've had some people call me. I even had a lady one time that called me from Sweden, and she said, the silver thing doesn't move. It doesn't move. I said, well, tell me what you're doing. She was trying to move it when the stitch width was on 4. I said, take it to 0, see what happens. It's moving. It's moving. It's moving. It moves so easy now. So I went through with her over the phone exactly what I just showed you and never heard from her again. So, she was either captured by aliens or she's a happy camper with her Swedish beauty. So that's all good. All right. So looking at this machine, the quick lay of the land, and then we'll wrap up this live stream. Over here, we've got feed dog drop. When it's at the 12 o'clock position, the feed dogs are fully engaged. When you rotate it down to, and this is actually jammed right now, and that's pretty common. So this will not rotate down to the 6 o'clock position right now, but that's where we want it if we're going to do free motion quilting. So this is all frozen up. When I go through my process, which is about 130 steps, the bottom of this machine comes off. You've seen that in Facebook shots before if you're a Facebook person. The whole bottom of the machine comes off. Everything is deep cleaned. Adjustments are made. Those lubrication pads that you otherwise can't get to are all lubricated as well to provide a wicking reservoir to keep the machine running tip top after it leaves the workshop. But also there's a spring mechanism with a plunger that has to be released in order to benefit from having a feed dog drop on these Swedish beauties. And right now it's all gummed up. It's frozen. So eventually this will be freed up, and then Sandy will be able to rotate this down to the 6 o'clock position. Feed dogs will be down, rotate it back to the 12 o'clock position. She's good to go. So stitch width 0 to 4. 4 is obviously going to be our widest point. 0 is going to give us a straight stitch. Stitch length, and again, this type 21 is going to have a totally different setup than the 21As or 21Es or the 19E specials. It's going to have a lever. Right now we're on the largest stitch, and we can unscrew this to make sure that it's all the way down. We weren't all the way down. Now we're going to get the largest stitch, gradually go up and shorten it. And on the largest stitch, we're going to get right around 5 stitches per inch on these Swedish Beauties. It's a little bit better than a Singer. Singer is going to give you six stitches per inch typically. Swedish Beauties will give you about a five stitch per inch output. And then as we move it up, we're going to be into the satin range right just below that 0. We're going to be doing about 30 stitches per inch. And then if you go above that demarcation line on the 0, you're all of a sudden going to be sewing in reverse. Make sense? Yeah. And then this is our control again for needle position when our stitch width is where. This will work when our stitch width is set on where? On 4 or on 0? You guys remember? Oh, hi to Michelle. I haven't looked at the live chat for a while. I'm like on Minute Maid over here. And I probably have missed greeting a number of folks, and I apologize for that. So hello to Michelle as well. You know, it's so great to have folks like Emma and Paula and Veronica and Sunny and Bill, because I can be over here, trying to walk you through this machine a little bit so that whoever watches this video after the live stream, and then all of a sudden they think about getting one of these, they're already going to have a lot deeper understanding of the machine and its functions and, how they can maximize it than someone that doesn't watch that video. And I don't have to worry about what's happening in the live chat because Paula and Emma and the other leaders are there to interact with folks, to be a resource, and to manage things. So what a blessing that is. What a blessing. Okay, what else do we have? So over here on this side of the machine, Paula had mentioned this specifically. She said, I love that slow gear. I love the slow gear on those Swedish Beauties. And the slow gear is this right here. Number one, you're going to have this little tab. You can see that little tab right there that sticks out from the left side. That little tab, when you slide a bobbin over it, there's a spring release on the other side of this bobbin winding assembly that's going to disengage the clutch automatically. That's why they oftentimes refer to these as Viking or Husqvarna automatics, because when the bobbin slides over, it depresses that little tab sticking out on the left side, and it just straight away disengages the clutch. So that's a wonderful thing. You don't have to turn anything. You don't have to release anything. Like on some of the Singers, you don't have to pull the balance wheel out to disengage the clutch or any of that stuff. You just slide the bobbin on and you're ready to wind a bobbin straight away. And then if you want to engage the slow gear, you just grab this black part and you pull it out like so. And then what happens is it uses a gear reduction like a 10-speed bike on the inside to gear that pulley down that belt is riding over. And it takes the machine from full speed down to what speed does it take it? Does anyone remember that from one of the previous classrooms that we've had together? You pull this out. Prior to pulling this out, you're full speed. You pull this out. What does it take it down to? Does it take it down to 4/5, 3/5, 2/5? What does it take it down to when you pull this out as far as reducing the speed? Again, it doesn't change the power of the machine. The machine is going to be 1.5 amps, regardless of what you do with this control. It's going to gear the speed down, just like changing gears on a 10-speed bike, where it's going to give you more control over sewing, more difficult turns or whatever you're trying to do to have more management of speed down at the needle. So Paula was saying about half, which means it would take us from full speed down to say, what about 2.5, 2.5, something like that, 2.5 fifths. And Emma was saying it takes you all the way down to 1/5. It reduces it basically by a factor of 5 from full speed all the way down to 1/5. And Emma in this instance is absolutely spot on. When you pull this out, all of a sudden from full speed, which on these Swedish Beauties, when they're optimized, they are racing machines. They are racing machines. So when you pull this out, you go from full speed all the way down to 1/5, and it gives you a huge amount of control when you're trying to stitch around the edges of a material or whatever you're trying to do where there's more intricate, controlled work. So it's a wonderful feature to have. Now, the one thing I'll caution you about, because I've also gotten calls on this before, not from Sweden, but I think I got a call from Germany one time where someone had gotten a machine, the slow gear was already engaged, and they delighted in the slow gear. It was great, wonderful. But then they did their first stitch line and they tried to rotate the balance wheel, and the balance wheel was locked. They couldn't get it unlocked. And that's because when you go through this gear reduction and it pushes out that one gear and drops it down to that 1/5 speed, it also creates a constraint on turning the balance wheel unless the motor is engaging it. So the simplest solution when you get done, you sew a line of stitches with a slow gear. Before you try rotating the balance wheel and forcing it, push your slow gear back in, just like that. And then the balance wheel will be really easy to turn, very free. And then when you get to your next stitch line, just engage the slow gear again. It's not hard to engage it and disengage it, right? It's quite easy. And then disengage it when you want to turn that balance wheel. But if you ever run into that, or if you do run into that, you know exactly what to do. If that balance wheel isn't turning, it seems like it's bound up, it's locked, just disengage that slow gear temporarily. And then get back to your sewing. Yeah. So now we're looking at the back of the machine, and we're seeing a couple of interesting things. This is going to be part of our reverse right here. It's connected to our pitman arm right there. We've got our timing belt right here. We got our cam inserted. And if you look at that cam very closely, you're going to see it's an A cam, but it's not just a standard A cam. Can you see that in the shot? Let's see. That was the clutch re-engaging there. Look right over here. You can see there's an A. I just turn my little light on the camera. Maybe that'll help. Or maybe that'll hurt. Start shutting it off. There, now you can see it pretty well. So you've got an A and then it looks like an I next to it, doesn't it? If you ever acquire a Swedish Beauty and you get cams like this, it could be on any of the letter cams. And these cams, if you have the full set, you'll have cams A, B, C, D, E. But if they have that little marker next to the letter, that little marker you can see right there, that's going to tell you that this is a revised cam. In other words, they came out with an original A cam that had 4 different stitch patterns on it and that preset zigzag that's in position 5. And then later they said, well, let's put some different stitches on that cam. Let's change out that ziggy zaggy stitch or whatever that Scott guy calls it and put a different ziggy zaggy stitch on there that's going to have a little bit different stitch pattern output. And then they put that little marker on there to say, this is not the original A cam, this is a revised A cam. So if you've ever had a Swedish Beauty and you said, geez, I mean, I've got 2 A cams. Why do I need them? Why would I need 2 A cams? Or maybe you have a BI type cam or a CI or a DI or an EI or whatever. You might say, why the heck would I need 2 A cams? That's silly. I'm going to sell it. Well, be careful, because if you have an original A cam and you have an A revised cam, you might have very different stitches on those 2 cams. So you'll want to hang on to both of those A cams until you can put them to use and see whether or not, okay, maybe I will sell one of them because I like these stitches better. But the stitches will be different between an original A cam and an A revised cam. So just keep that in mind. If you want to remove the cam, you just move this little lever. See where it's spring loaded? And just gently slide that out. And the beauty of these green machines versus, say, the Model 2000s that you've seen on this channel before is these do not have a traditional plastic cam stack like a lot of the Husqvarnas do. This has a mounting stem, and it uses this finger as a reader. This is the finger I was talking about right here where my finger is pointing. My finger is pointing at the finger. And this is the finger that, depending on where that stitch width is set up, it's either going to extend or retract. Let's see if I can do that to show you. Okay, so right now it just rotated into the cam. See how it's rotated in? I wish I could keep that down. Could one of you reach through the camera and hold this down for me, please? Could one of you do that, please? How about I just let go of the camera? I'll just let go of the camera, just do it this way. So you can see right now, I think you can see that finger is rotated in where it would be reading this cam right now. And that's where we never want to try removing a cam when that stitch width is set on anything other than 0, because then we're going to be forcing this metal piece against this plastic polymer piece, and we're going to do damage to one or both. So we rotate the stitch width, and watch what happens to that little reader finger right there. All of a sudden it retracts. So now you can remove that cam, now you can move that slider, and this little finger is not going to interrupt the movement or the flow of anything. Can you actually see that? Yeah, you can see it now. So that right now, again, is disengaged. And then when we want to read that cam, we rotate the stitch width, and it rotates into that cam to read those bumps. So reading, not reading. Reading, not reading. So little simple things like that can make your life a lot easier. A lot easier. And we'll go ahead and put this cam back in. Kind of rotate it. You can seat it into place until it's fully seated now, and then this will release. And then we should be able to, let's see if we can move that slider right now. There we go. So really all we're doing is we're sliding in on this fixed mounting point, and then depending on what bumps are in line with that reader finger is what stitch output we're going to get. See that? And there are adjustments on this as well, so that reader finger is reading those bumps accurately. It's one of the service points that I do. And again, the average sewing back is not going to know how to do that. So yeah, okay. So that was just a little walk around the machine that just arrived at the workshop that belongs to Sandy. And again, I would love to plug this in for you, but if you're joining the live stream a little bit late, we've got a wiring job on the main power plug for this machine right now, where they've wrapped it in this special tape that's used for HVAC applications, and it's an aluminum-based tape adjacent to an electrical field. And I don't know what's underneath here, so we're not going to plug this puppy in. We're not going to do it. But hopefully some of this was helpful, and that you enjoyed the unboxing. I always enjoy our time together. Set this motor over here. We kind of talk about capacitors and resistors and all that kind of stuff. And y'all have a great rest of the evening. Hopefully you've had a chance to visit with folks and meet some new friends as well. Oh, okay. And Paul is talking about, I think Paul is talking about that cleated belt on the back of the machine. I wasn't looking at the chat straight away. But she's talking about this cleated belt right here. You see it right there, just behind this bar. That's part of that adjuster for the tri-motion and that. And these cleated belts, this particular belt we're looking at right here is really designed less for traction. It's designed for the timing of the machine itself. This belt over here to the left of it, in that corner over there, it's a V-style belt. Kind of shine my light on it. This V-style belt is going to determine what kind of traction we're going to get from that machine at launch. And on this machine, again, there's going to be 3 belts. There's going to be a timing belt, which is cleated over here. There's going to be a long belt, which we're looking at right here. This long belt, which goes over that bobbin winding assembly and then comes up to the balance wheel, goes across the main shaft. And then we've got a short belt that's encased in this motor cover area right here. And that short belt is going to go from the output shaft of the motor over to that bobbin winding assembly. That's going to be our major traction issue right here, where that motor spins up. And if you don't have the tension set well on that bobbin winding assembly, and there's not enough, there's enough but not too much pressure on that output pulley, then you're going to get, usually you're going to get spin right here as that motor energy is leaving and being transferred to that bobbin case. So you have to be mindful of that. There's a number of adjustments that I do over here so that those belts don't slip. Because again, unlike a direct drive 201-2 that's en route right now to Paula's house out in Florida, this is not a direct drive machine. I've had people say to me adamantly, the green machines are direct drive machines. They're not. They're belt driven machines. But if they're adjusted and calibrated properly, they run just as well as a direct drive machine. But it's all a matter of getting that sweet balance between that bobbin. That bobbin winding assembly is the hub. It's the hub for the output of the motor. It's the hub for the transfer of that energy up to the main shaft that feeds down to the needle bar. So you have to be aware of that when you're working. If you want to tinker on your own machine, you've got to spend a fair amount of time over here to get that set up for success. Otherwise, you're either going to have slip at launch, or you're going to be binding that motor. You're going to put so much tension on that motor output pulley that motor is going to be running super hot. So you got to find that sweet balance between enough but not too much when you're adjusting the pulleys and everything over here. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, these cleated belts, Husqvarna used them, Pfaff used them, Elna used them, a number of other manufacturers. Seldom, if ever, do you have to replace a cleated belt. They can even be frayed, and they just keep going and going and going like the Energizer Rabbit because they're so doggone strong. They're so strong. Yep. Well, thank you to Sandy for sending this machine to the workshop and not following the advice of folks that are telling her to junk this machine. I don't know why yet. I will eventually, maybe not, because this is a beautiful machine. Type 21s, I've got a number of them in my personal collection. They're a fabulous machine. They're incredibly strong, incredibly reliable. You've got that extension bed you can put on the machine as well. I'll have to ask Sandy if she has one. If she doesn't, I've got a spare one that I could offer to her. But again, a machine is only as good as the amount of preparatory work you put into it, right? It's like anything. It's like wanting to go to the Olympics or wanting to run that half marathon and just putting on your shorts and your sneakers or your tennis shoes, depending on where you live in the country, to whatever you call those things you put on your feet, and going out there and just running the race with no preparation. You're probably going to pull a hamstring, or you're going to hurt yourself, or if you're old enough, you might even have a heart attack. So you've got to train, right? You got to train and prepare for an event. When we're preparing our vintage sewing machines for the event of sewing with them for different projects, we should put as much care and as much thoughtfulness into doing that as we do training for a major physical event like running or biking or swimming or anything else, or hiking. So yeah, those are my words of wisdom. Hopefully you got something out of this. You enjoyed it. And I'm grateful to all of you. I'm grateful to all the folks that felt comfortable enough to step into the live stream and step out into the live chat and introduce themselves, like our new friend from Tampa, Florida, and others that have done it as well. And a lot of those that are now in the live chat were ones that used to sit in the shadows all the time, including Emma and Paula and Sonny and Bill. They were kind of a watch and wait type approach. And then eventually hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. There's no judgment. They're not being mean to each other, and they're not being critical. It's friendly. It's like a family setting. And then one by one, they started stepping out into the light and joining the live chat. And so hopefully if you didn't do that this time, maybe the next time or the time after that, you'll feel comfortable in doing that. Because I know if I'm involved talking about a machine or presenting a machine, Paula or Emma or Sonny or Veronica or Bill or Susie any of the folks, it doesn't have to be a leader, any of the folks will certainly put your mind at ease and make you feel welcome. So that's it. If you're on the East Coast, it's going on 9 o'clock. If you're on the West Coast, it's probably going on 6 o'clock. And if you're over in some other country around the world, who knows what time it is. But we're going to wrap it up now. I'll leave it running for a little bit. I'll put a little bit of music on. And if you want to chat for a little bit longer, and then I'll just wrap up I'll end the live stream just randomly at some point, unless someone says, wait. Take care, everybody. God bless you. All right. Something other than rap music. What do we have? Let's try some good old banjo music. Oh, yeah. Let's see what this sounds like. Yeah. Try this one. Nah, not that one. Okay, that's not bad. How about that one? Yeah, this is cool. This almost feels like banjo beach music. And since this machine is from a community that has the word beach in it, yeah, we'll put on some banjo beach music to wrap this up.